It all started on a cold fall evening when I decided to take a solo trip to my family's cabin. It was tucked away in the woods, far from any town or other homes. A perfect place to clear my mind. I loved the isolation. The cabin was old, creaky, and smelled faintly of wood and musk, but there was something comforting about it. My grandparents had left it to me when they passed, and every time I went it felt like a piece of my childhood was alive again. That night, I was sitting by the fire, reading a book, the wind howling outside. The cabin was old, so the wind made it creak and moan, a sound I had always found oddly soothing. The fire crackled, its warm glow casting flickering shadows on the walls. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Around midnight, I noticed something strange. The light outside the cabin was dimming, and the shadows on the walls seemed to shift. I chalked it up to the wind, but then I heard something that made my heart stop, a soft tapping on the window. I froze. It wasn't the wind. This was deliberate, rhythmic tapping. It sounded like someone gently knocking on the glass. I slowly stood up and made my way to the window, my feet heavy against the floorboards. As I peered outside, I saw nothing but the darkness of the trees. There were no cars, no lights, just the deep shadows of the forest stretching out into oblivion. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but the tapping continued. It was coming from the far side of the cabin, where the trees were thicker. I tried to convince myself it was an animal or some loose branch hitting the window, but something felt off. With a nervous breath, I grabbed a flashlight and slowly opened the door to step outside. The air was cold and still, carrying with it an eerie sense of dread. As I walked around the cabin, the tapping stopped. I stood there, scanning the dark forest, my breath visible in the cold air. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Suddenly, I saw it. A figure standing in the window, staring out at me. I froze, my heart racing. The figure was dark and distorted, a shadow that seemed to shift with the wind, like it wasn't entirely solid. I couldn't make out any features, but the way it stood there, unmoving, staring into the woods, it felt wrong. I turned to run back inside, but just as I was about to grab the door handle, I heard a loud bang from behind me. I whipped around, but the figure was gone. My mind raced. Had I imagined it? Was I just spooked from being alone in the dark? But when I looked up at the window again, it was back. The figure was standing there, looking down at me, its outline barely visible in the dark. This time, though, it was closer to the glass. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I ran inside and locked the door. I didn't dare turn off the lights or even move from the couch. I stayed up the entire night, clutching my phone in case I needed to call someone, but the rest of the night was eerily quiet. The tapping never returned, and I never saw the figure again. The next morning, I packed up and left without looking back. I've never returned to the cabin since. Every time I close my eyes, I can still see that figure in the window, staring back at me. It was a rainy Thursday night, and I was driving home from work when I noticed something strange. The streets were almost empty, the sky a blanket of grey clouds, and the rain kept pouring down in sheets. My headlights barely cut through the thick mist, and I had to squint to see anything beyond a few feet in front of my car. As I neared my neighborhood, I saw something in the rearview mirror that made my blood run cold. A black car was following me. It wasn't the same car I had seen earlier on the highway, and there weren't any other cars around. My instincts screamed at me, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just another driver headed in the same direction, I thought, but the car didn't pass me. It just stayed behind, its headlights casting an eerie glow on the wet asphalt. I took a left, turn at the next intersection, hoping to lose the car, but it followed. The longer I drove, the more anxious I became. I could feel my heart racing. There was no reason why someone should be following me at this hour, especially on a rainy night like this. My mind raced with all sorts of possibilities. Had I upset someone without realizing it? Was it a coincidence, or was someone out there watching me? I decided to make a few more turns, hoping that by zigzagging through the neighborhood, I could shake them off. But the car kept up with me, never getting too close but always right behind me. My palms were sweating as I approached my house, a sense of dread settling over me. I parked in my driveway and immediately got out, looking nervously at the rearview mirror. The black car stopped just behind me, its headlights blinding. Then, after a few moments, the car backed away, slowly disappearing into the rain. I stood there, frozen for a few seconds, before I rushed inside and locked all the doors. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know what had just happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night I stayed up late, too paranoid to sleep. I kept looking out the windows, half expecting to see the black car parked outside my house. But nothing happened. The rain continued to pour, and the night passed in silence. The next morning, I tried to forget about the strange encounter. Maybe it was all in my head. But when I went outside to check my car, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A set of muddy footprints leading from the sidewalk to my front door. They were small, almost child-sized, and they were too perfect, too deliberate. I have no idea who was in that car, or who had been standing by my front door, but I haven't been able to shake the feeling that someone is watching me. Every time I look out my window, I half expect to see that black car parked across the street just waiting. It was a typical Sunday afternoon when I decided to spend the day alone in my apartment. I had no plans, no distractions, just me, my couch, and some much-needed time to relax. The apartment was small but cozy, located on the third floor of a quiet building in the middle of the city. My phone was charging on the counter, and I was sprawled out on the couch scrolling through social media when I heard the ringtone. It was a number I didn't recognize, but that wasn't unusual. I often got spam calls or telemarketers, but for some reason this time I picked it up. Hello? There was silence on the other end. I almost hung up, thinking it was just a missed call or a wrong number, but before I could press the button, a voice finally came through. "Hey, it's me, where are you?" I froze. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. It had a soft, gravelly quality to it almost, like it had been distorted by a phone line. But the worst part was how the voice sounded, almost too casual, like we were old friends. The kind of voice you hear when someone's been in your life for years. A voice you should recognize. I took a moment to collect myself, trying to suppress the rising panic in my chest. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, and then the voice answered, still casual, almost friendly. "You don't remember me, do you?" "It's been a while." I could feel my blood run cold. My heart started pounding in my chest as a sudden flood of memories hit me, but none of them were good. 1,000 faces flashed through my mind, all blurred and unfamiliar. I didn't recognize this voice, but it felt like it was something I should have, and that thought terrified me. "Look, I'm sorry," I said, trying to stay calm. "I think you have the wrong number. I don't know you." But the voice didn't let up. Instead, it grew more insistent. "Don't lie, you know exactly who I am. Remember the park, the swing set?" I froze again. The park. The swing set. My mind reeled. That was from years ago, a childhood memory buried and long forgotten. I remembered a time when I used to go to the park every afternoon after school, the swings creaking as I pushed myself higher into the sky. It was a peaceful time, a carefree time, but there was one day I could never forget. A day when I went to the park alone and met someone who shouldn't have been there. My memory was hazy, but I could vividly recall the feeling of someone watching me, standing in the shadows just outside the playground. I hadn't seen the person's face, but I remembered the sense of dread that washed over me. I hadn't been able to shake it for years. But how could this person know about that? How could they know about a day I had buried deep within me? My voice trembled as I asked, "Who are you?" The person on the other end chuckled, the sound cold and empty. "It's been a long time, but I haven't forgotten you. You're not the only one who remembers." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt the room close in around me as the chill of fear settled over my skin. "I don't know what you want," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, this time much quieter, almost conspiratorial. "You shouldn't have forgotten. I've been waiting." I felt the room tilt, my heart hammering in my chest. I was about to speak again to ask who they were, when suddenly the line went dead. The phone clicked, and then there was nothing but silence. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mind spinning. I didn't recognize the number. There was no trace of who had called. I tried calling back, but the line rang through to voicemail every time. I even checked the number online, but nothing came up. It was like the call had never happened, like the person on the other end had never existed. But I knew they were real. I could still hear their voice in my head, the way they spoke, the way they knew things about me that no one should know. I couldn't stop thinking about the park, the swing set, and the feeling of being watched. That memory that had been buried for so long was now at the surface, haunting me once again. For weeks after that call, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I felt eyes on me when I walked through the streets. When I sat at home, when I tried to sleep, I couldn't escape it. Every time I went outside, I half expected to see someone standing at the end of the block, watching me. I didn't know who it was, but I could feel their presence. Then one evening, while sitting on my couch, my phone rang again. The same number. The same voice. "You remember now, don't you?" they said. And I knew then that I was never going to escape whatever. Whoever this was,